Oh. Alright, it's for DeAndre Johnson's sports psychotherapy and sports class. My name is Morgan Fons. With me here, I have Valley Track Club head coach and HIU assistant cross-country track coach, Jorge Jabaz. Jorge, thanks for coming on.
Hey man, thanks for having me.
No problem. So obviously, you have worked with tons of high-level athletes in the sport of running.
Yeah.
And so, this is the perfect question for me to ask. It's probably the most subjective out of the few. Is what is your definition of a high-performance athlete?
So, high-performance athletes, can be portrayed in different ways. It doesn't have to be necessarily by wins and losses. It doesn't have to be based off of how fast or slow you are. But an athlete can be considered, or high-performance athlete or elite athlete can be considered any athlete that's willing to do whatever it takes within legal bounds of ethical dilemma. Are they willing to put in the work 7 days a week? The mileage, the athletes that are willing to do the extra, but we're also, that 1% of athletes that are able to compete with any athlete around the world. Eliteness can be taken a lot of different ways, but I guess, the elite athlete or high performance athlete is the athlete that's always willing to go above and beyond and do every little thing that it takes to get to that level.
Makes sense, especially with how the people you work with. That's key. All right, so what are some key areas that you help your athletes during challenging sports situations?
Can you repeat the question again?
Sorry. What are some key areas that you help your athletes during challenging sports situations, like situations of mental toughness, or some situations where they're just the odds are stacked against them? What would you do as a coach with it?
So I would say one of the hardest things as a coach is when you don't see results is trying to figure out why. If the fitness is there, then there's the mental component to things, and it's just trying to get athletes to understand that if you put in the work, which is 10% of it, the rest of it, 90%, is a lot of it mental. So it's being able to get student athletes to understand that we're overcomplicating things. If you put in the work, the fitness is there. It's just being able to get outside of your own head, out of your own thoughts. And negative thoughts is, unfortunately, a performance killer. So it's understanding and teaching student athletes to just think less. The saying goes, less is more. Well, the same applies to how you you think through things. It's teaching athletes how to think before going into competitions. And, they say, what's the saying go? It's practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And so you've got to understand that, practice are the opportunities that we should be taking to perfect as much as we can within our control to be able to show up on race day and not allow external factors to implicate and negatively impact how we go about a race.
Makes sense. So it's all in your head pretty much.
Yeah.
All right, so what is your method in motivating athletes to perform at a high level? What's your main coaching method that you would on?
So I like to lead by example. Whenever I can, I also try to jump into workouts and try and motivate, student athletes, and just to have them understand, key workouts. If you can do these set type of workouts, you should be able to perform at this level. It's just trying to give reassurance and trying to encourage student athletes to understand the basic anatomy and knowledge and formulas that running requires. If you do this, it's kind of like math. 2 + 2 = 4. Well, if you do mile repeats at this pace, if you can do a speed workout at this pace, and if you do this much mileage, you can do this. So unfortunately, with running, if the science and the formula and the work is all put in, you should equate to this type of performance. And getting the athletes to understand that, the sport in general, there's so much physical components that come to it, but it's really comes down to 90% of it being mental. If you can control the mental aspect of sport, getting athletes to really build confidence in what they do in practice is the hardest and most important thing for me.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So going up that question, these kind of go hand in hand, is how do you enhance your athletes' mental and emotional strengths?
So with that question, that's a good one, but it comes to also figuring out the physical aspects as well. As you got to figure out an athlete's strengths and weaknesses, both on the field and off the field. Being able to have just a casual conversation, being able to have athletes understand, this is an area that you are very strong in. that's not what we should focus on. It's finding, the weaknesses such as race anxiety or feeling unprepared or just, feeling, just anxious. Those are all things that are, again, our performance killers. And as athletes and as coaches, we have to figure out a way to make sure that the student can surpass that. And so it's part of simplifying things, but it's not ignoring these issues. Unfortunately, what I see with a lot of athletes on our team is, we get sucked into this whole idea that, things have to be perfect. No, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. But perfect practice also means being able to run through things that are out of your control, the weather, the wind, nerves. Yeah, everyone gets nervous, but being able to look past all those, outside factors that are well within your control of handling. That's out of my control, but I can control how I feel and how I am right now. It's giving, student athletes the tools to understand that they have the ability to rise to the occasion and perform as well as they need to perform if they can just control the 10 inches above their shoulders, so their head.
Makes sense. That's what a lot of people say. So this is a final question I've had, just because of the different, also what we've been studying too is athletes, especially nowadays with student athletes, and with the rise in depression, rise in anxiety, rise in actually suicide, unfortunately. So my advice for you is, what advice do you have for athletes going through tough times? Just anything, like stuff that's outside their own control.
Being an athlete and being a current coach for myself, I've dealt with stuff like that personally and with other athletes, and one piece of advice is, just talk to someone. You're never going to resolve any issues. We can't resolve issues if we think we're in this alone. You're not there. We've got teammates, coaches, family. Conversation and communication is 100% necessary. Whether you want to get a job, whether you want to be successful on and off the field, whether you're dealing with any type of mental illness, we got to communicate these things. And people don't know what's going on through your life, even though we need to be self-aware, and we need to be really just kind of, secure enough, or find a way, or find an environment, from a coach's standpoint, from a sports standpoint. My biggest concern is making sure that I have created an environment that welcomes people to open up and not be scared to talk their mind and, speak to their coaches if there's something that bothers them. Because at the end of the day, we can run, we can still do what we're doing now post-collegiately. It may not be at a high level, but at the end of the day, we also want to make sure we get athletes to graduate feeling good about themselves from an emotional standpoint. And so one thing is just making sure that as coaches, we allow athletes to feel like they can come to us for anything, whether it's about running or not. And so it's having an open door policy is something that's really important that student athletes don't feel they have. And it's our job as leaders, And again, this also falls down on teammates. I think teammates need to make sure that they have this open door policy, and they're able to also be, someone that their teammates can fall back on. That's a big thing, a big concern of mine. It's just, we live in a scary world. We also live in a world where social media can be really impactful, but it can also be really impactful in a negative and positive way.
That's
and
true.
I think it's, if we're on social media as coaches, it should always be something that we're able to share a positive message, and it's an encouraging message, so that, again, we make sure that, people who follow us, we're leading by example, and we're able to just ensure that they're listened to and they're not alone. And so, again, being able to connect with athletes both on and off the field at an intellectual level and at a level that makes them feel like they're not alone, they're listened to, is really a big part of sport. And so, again, at the end of the day, performance is secondary, but making sure that the athlete is feeling 100% healthy emotionally should be, the main concern of any sports team.
That makes sense, and that's great advice. I guarantee a lot of people listening. Well, that's pretty much all I got for you. Thank you very much.
Cool, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
See ya.
And we're out.